Karl, thanks for joining me on today's Spotlight. So it's Karl Baxter from Stunn. Karl, over to you. Introduce us to your business, please.
So, it's a long and complicated route, Andy.
They normally are.
Stunn, originally, we date back to 1996, 1997, early days of the very early days of the modern internet, back when it was still the Wild West. So we came out of that time as started more as a, I guess, design ad agency. Modern internet started happening. My background was creative and design. My business partner was more of a programming background. And back in those days, things either looked great and didn't do anything, or they worked and looked awful. And our thing was always, well, why not both? And so we set up a business that tried to manage both creative and technical hand in hand.
Yeah.
And we started working with some fairly large local Midlands businesses like National Express Group. So we looked after all of the Midland Metro when that first launched, and Travel West Midlands websites and what have you, which sort of took us into more enterprise work and more sort of bespoke-y kind of work. And that's where we ended up staying. You fast forward to 2024, and we're still largely doing what we did before. Now it's called UX, user experience, and customer experience, and various other grandiose titles. But essentially what we're doing is we're still trying to develop quite complex software that is easy for the end user to use. And mostly these days we do that in financial services. Alongside Stunn, we have another business that we own, which is an e-commerce incubator. So we have we've got 3 brands over there. One is an affiliate marketing website. One is a traditional e-commerce business consumer reseller. So we resell other people's products, import. It's actually toys. We import a lot of stuff from Scandinavia and Europe and sell it in the UK. And the third one is a direct consumer brand, which we're responsible for the manufacturing of as well. So that sits alongside Stunn. 2 things: it gives us a revenue stream, but the main thing that it does for us is it allows us to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to e-commerce. And we've got the 3 sort of main categories of modern e-com all sat in-house that we can experiment with in our own right.
So it sounds like the business has been pretty diverse, a long and windy road to here, Karl. What would be your ideal client now? I mean, you've talked about financial services. Just expand on that a little bit for me, if you don't mind, and maybe any other sectors that you would serve.
Sure. So I think the business is kind of at a point of pivot at the moment. So we've talked about financial services. We do a lot of work in insurance, and that work we've created a platform that allows us to build quite complex enterprise systems quite quickly. So your equivalent might be something like SAP, where you've got the guts of what's there, and then there's a configuration. So ideal customer on that side, on the financial services side, would be insurance brokers of a size and scale, but don't need to be massive anymore because of that basis. Outside of that, in the general bespoke work, we work across the board. So we work across manufacturing, we work in mass transit, in retail, in professional services. But I think really, in terms of the general business, where we come in is where platforms fall off digitally. So if you've got a business issue that you can't buy your way out of off the shelf, or you're fighting in the margins of an off-the-shelf system, then that's where we tend to come in, either to bring more systems together, or alternatively to write something so you've not got a reliance on something that isn't working inside your business. So generally on that side of things, it would be medium to large enterprise. Would be normal for
Yep.
us.
Yep. Okay.
I don't think that's not because we're only accessible to those businesses, but I think they're the kind of businesses that need the kind of things that we do.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty clear. Thank you. So what would you say differentiates you from your competition?
That's an interesting one as well. I think again, it's because the diversity of the business itself, and maybe if I focus down on the insurance side, it's probably going to be easier. So within the financial services space, it's such a heavily regulated environment that most of the focus when it comes to digital tends to be on back office and on making sure that compliance is there and the regulatory environment's correct, and
Yep.
back office automation to free up time. So we do a lot of that kind of work, but we bring it back into the front end as well. So there's that e-commerce experience and retail experience and user experience. We bring that back to the fore and try and get our customers thinking about their end users as much as we do about the internals. I suppose from a competition perspective, most of our competitors are the big guys, the big consulting groups, your Capgeminis, your Boston Consultings, your Accentures, and we're not at that size or scale, but we have been through all the third-party vendor management exercises and the compliance and governance and regulatory frameworks that we need to have gone through to work with these kind of organizations. So I guess that makes us the maverick. We're the wild card in that space, because we can work maybe a little bit more entrepreneurially with a little bit less structure and a bit more agility.
Okay.
A little bit more like an in-house team. So I think that's probably main point of differentiation for us.
Yeah.
So the fact that we can do the big stuff smaller, and the fact that we're more concerned about the end user.
Great. Thank you. So here we are. What's the aspirations for the business for the next 5 years then, would you say?
Well, again, touching on that pivot, we're in a really quite an exciting time at the moment with the business. My partner and I are probably more tightly involved than a coach might like to hear at the moment. But I think because of this pivot, we feel like we need the intimacy with all aspects of the business. So we're working very hard at the moment, deep inside the software, deep inside customer requirements, deep inside sales process, deep inside pricing. You know, the whole set of the whole gamut of business processes we're quite heavily involved in. Aspirations for that certainly over the next, actually more like 3 years than 5 years, is to really get the sales process solidified and get as much of the onboarding processes and project and program management processes systemized as we can, so that can become, I guess we can provide training manuals for it, we can provide documentation for it, and we can provide training for it to take ourselves away from the coalface a little bit and give that business the opportunity to scale. One of the really exciting things about this pivot for us actually is that we've always been a projects business. So fortunately, we've been more feast than famine, but there hasn't been the recurring revenues that some other businesses will enjoy. We've not really been afforded that luxury. So if we can develop scale on the financial services side of the business, because there's a licensing model behind it, we can quite quickly get to a point where the business is into a position of profitability without the professional services element of what we do. So that licensing element will cover cost. And if that's covering costs in and of itself, it then really gives us the opportunity to invest inside the business on product development and give us huge flexibility to just be the best that we can possibly be. Because the external work it basically just becomes bonus cash, which obviously helps everyone. You know, I'm not being flippant about that, but if we can drive a business where the recurring revenues and those predictable revenues, the license revenues, are covering the cost of that business can be an amazing business, and that's really what we're looking to do.
Great, thank you. So next point then, what would you say your biggest learning has been since you've been a business owner in this journey of 27, 28 years?
That's quite a challenging one. I think the biggest learning actually is that moment of realization that even if you feel like you're a 9 out of 10, you can't be a 27 out of 30. If you're a 9 out of 10 in 3 areas, you're a 21 out of 30 if you're trying to do all 3 of them. And I think the sooner that you accept that and try and limit yourself as far as possible to your strengths and your leadership, then the sooner you're a happy business owner.
That's pretty succinct. Yeah, agreed. Great. So over to the biggest challenge then. What's been the biggest challenge you've encountered, and how did you overcome it?
We've had the same challenge a few times, actually, Andy. This is a really interesting question for me, because the real challenge for us has always been our industry is a barometer industry. So we've always needed diversification of the client base. So, for instance, you know, if you niche down into travel and COVID happens, no one's traveling, nobody's booking accommodation, you're the first one to go. However, if you're working in travel and healthcare in a COVID situation, you've got those tipping points there. So we've always had the challenge of being a barometer business, and it's, you know, over a few issues. So you go back to credit crunch was the first really major one. We were working with a couple of really quite large enterprises. They were struggling because of the state of the capital markets and the state of the financial markets, and therefore everything's getting reined in. We were either too small a business or too few large clients that we were hit really, really hard by that, and, you know, involving restructuring. And we were fortunate. We never lost our people, and we never lost our customers, but we very nearly lost our livelihoods, and houses were on the line, and, you know, all of that. All of that stuff. And then, of course, the same thing happened with COVID.
Yeah.
The COVID challenge was slightly different because we were a bit better prepared, because we'd been through it with the credit crunch. And so some of the mistakes that we made first time round, you know, not paying yourself, and, or, you know, those kind of things that you're doing from a place of goodness and kindness and from a moral standing, but you then allowing a business that can't function in and of itself to continue functioning by being supported by individuals, which can't be done. So, you know, this time we've always been a sort of a debt-free business. We've never run on credit. But when COVID came round, I instantly shored up the balance sheet. We used the financing and the funding that was available, and we put an extra 6 months behind us to give us the time and the breathing space to allow us to think about what's next. And I guess part 3 of that process is where our vulnerabilities were with COVID. You know, we shored up the balance sheet, so we knew we were okay for time. We knew we had furlough if we needed it. So the underlying business was relatively stable, but we didn't know what business was there out of the other side of it. And what we did know was, again, the companies, the businesses that we were working with, including the large ones. It wasn't just small businesses being scared. Everyone's like, right, shore up the balance sheet. Any special projects either getting shelved or paused, anything that had to go on because people were working from home and what have you, were slowing down. So people were missing milestones. You waited for assets and inputs that you can't hit another billion milestone until you get the inputs that you need to do the work. So everything slowed down. And so I guess the challenge and the learning from that again is, again, how can you protect yourself from being a barometer business? And that then leads us into this recurring revenue model that we're trying to achieve now to really, you know, put those fortifications up around the business for what might come next.
Yeah, absolutely. Understand. Great. If you were sitting here with the knowledge that you have now, having a conversation with your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
Before you go running off building a world-class development team, go and run off and build a world-class sales team.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still trying to give myself the same piece of advice now as a 49-year-old. We've always been fantastic operationally, and we've never put the sales structures in place, and it's made, you know, it's one thing that we've always had a business that we know well, and the dynamics of the business are great because the personalities within the business are all, you know, birds of a feather effectively. Yeah. And so that makes for quite a happy work environment. However, I think if I'm, you know, being brutally honest about business structure, you know, obviously, clearly we've got those processes in place, but we outsource, and, you know, some bits are automated, and we're using maybe more fragmented strategies than you would do, and consequently, the results on that side of the business aren't, they're fine, but they're not as good as the bits that we really focus on on that internal team building. And I think I think from really quite young, I sort of feel like we could draw a good business on paper. But I think if I could have the whole lot over again, I'd be much quicker at getting from the paper exercise to the hard reality of putting those bums on seats and putting the right bums on the right seats quickly. And I think, you know, I think that's definitely advice I'd give to myself.
Great. Yeah, I think that might be advice that a few people would give to themselves, actually.
Yeah. And but I think it's, you know, it's really easy because you know, I wasn't much older than 18 when I started doing this. You know,
Yeah.
so, you know, it's 2021. And I didn't start a business because I wanted to be a businessman. I started a business because I was good at something that I was passionate about. And
people,
we allowed ourselves to morph and change as you learn, you're learning industries and opportunities are arising, and you're taking those opportunities, and they're taking you off in different pathways. You know, as I started, also was interested in doing his music industry, and then before I knew it, we did a night bus flyer for Travel West Midlands, and next thing you know, we're the biggest e-commerce guys in public transport for 5 years. It's like, you know, so these things sort of happen to you, and it's the sort of learning on the job. We did get some mentoring, and we were quite fortunate. There was some free, you know, sort of free funding about. So we settled through the Prince's Trust. So there was a network around us, which was great. So the financial discipline was always there. There was, you know, the accountant was there from the start, and that kind of stuff. So we got that stuff right, but we never really had the help with structure. And then you kind of get yourself into a modality and a way of working that over time becomes entrenched. And we got a lot of it right, but not all of it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So if you had to wrap all that up in a nice little present and put a bow on top, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give to the other business owners watching this? Just one. It's hard, isn't it?
Oh. I think I've always felt my best in my business when I've known my governance has been right.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the exciting stuff around being entrepreneurial and being strategic and, you know, developing a good life work balance and having time to spend time with your staff and, you know, having time to talk to your business partner and all of that. I think all of that happens best with a clear mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the clear mind comes from good governance. So racing to get yourself 6 months operating costs in the bank, racing yourself to make sure your tax payments are automated, your accountancy schedules are all done, and just that real sort of background stuff that creates so much white noise and so much stress.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I package it up, all of it up, so the times when I've been at my best is when that's been at its best. And the times I've been at my worst is when that's been at its worst.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, great answer. Thank you. So your website details are going to be sitting underneath this video for everybody to go and dig around in and find out more about what you do. What would be the best next steps, Carl, in terms of somebody who's interested in finding out more about that?
To talk to us, well, yeah, I mean the website gives a reasonable idea of what we do. It's always a challenging narrative for us because there's different kinds of businesses that we work with, and we work with a lot of different kinds of business challenges. And you know, sometimes we're talking to marketing people, sometimes operational, sometimes IT, and all of that kind of gets lost in the mix. What we actually do is we solve problems, and we solve problems digitally. And best next step is to talk to us. What we most of the work we do is quite complex, and so us getting to quotes and estimates and what have you, is it tends to be quite a big process. But what we do like to do, and we'll always do as a board and as directors, is we'll give our time, and plenty of it, just to chew the fat. So on what those opportunities might be and what the options might be. And we're always happy to pass that experience on, whether that means you're working with us or not. You know, if the amount of people I turn away for e-commerce, when, you know, you don't need bespoke, Shopify will do you fine. Go and spend $79 a month on that. Don't spend 79 grand on me, you know. And so we will give that advice if that advice is timely, and provide those roadmaps as best as we can. So I guess that's the best way to engage with us. Is you want an open dialogue and, you know, a genuine conversation about where you are. We'll provide genuine feedback, whether that's right for us at the time or not. And if you like what you hear and want to work with us, great. If somebody else needs to hear it, tell them, and we'll help them instead.
Perfect. Great answer. Thank you. Carl, some great insights today. Thank you very much for sharing them with us. Great. Best of luck with the pivot. And yeah, thanks very much again. Enjoy the rest of the sunshine.
Cheers.